Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen on the Iconic Production channel. I am Jam. This is a show where we sit around and we talk about things in gaming that are beautiful and interesting. That's basically the focus of the show. Beauty and interesting. And today we've got something that satisfies both. We're wrapping up our look at Age of Sigmar Soulbound, the role-playing game from Cubicle 7. And we're going to look at the mechanics today, and we're going to look at the starter box and why I think that Cubicle 7 puts out the best starter boxes on the market, hands down, full stop. Like, I think every company should be looking at the way Cubicle 7 does their starter boxes and take notice. So let's talk about the mechanics in Soulbound to begin with. So I'll be honest, when I first read this game, I found it to be very fiddly. And I think that's true about Wrath and Glory, Soulbound, and Warhammer Fantasy. There are a lot of moving pieces to the individual, like the core mechanic. So one thing I love about Savage Worlds, and we've talked about this quite a bit, is how simple the core mechanic is. You roll 2 dice, your wild die and your trait die. You're trying to get 4 or higher, and every 4 points above that, you get a raise. I've explained the entirety of Savage Worlds' core mechanic to you here and now. But the Warhammer games definitely fall more on the crunchy end of the rules spectrum, and I'm okay with that. I like crunchy games. And so at first blush, Soulbound seems fairly simple. When you make a test, you add your attribute dice, so you have body, mind, and soul. You have usually between 1 and 5 dice in that attribute. You take those dice, they're all d6s. You're only rolling 6-sided dice in Soulbound. And you take your traits training, your skills training, and you add those together, you get a die pool. 4s and higher are success. Well, sometimes. Because each skill or each task you rate with 2 numbers, and they're marked X colon Y. X is the number that you need on the die or higher to succeed. So easier tasks, you might need a lower number. Harder tasks, you might need a higher number. So you might need a 3 or better on this task and a 6 or better on something else. The number after the colon is how many successes you need to roll to succeed at the task. Anything over, you have ways of spending it. Okay, that seems simple enough. But your skills have 2 components to them. You have training, which is how many dice you get to add for the skill, and you have focus, which represents kind of your expertise at the skill. And every point of focus can be used to raise one of the dice you roll up by a number. So if you have 3 focus and you rolled a 1 on a d6, you could spend all 3 points to change that 1 into a 4 and a success. Okay, so now we have 2 components to skills and the die pool mechanic. So it's not a simple binary, did I succeed or fail? You have some ways to manipulate it. On top of that, you have metal. And most characters in the starter set have between 1 and 2 points of metal. And you get 1 point of metal back each turn. So you can, conceivably use at least 1 point of metal each turn. And metal's used to activate talents, which are, like feats, or to, cast a miracle. You can spend it to take an extra action, but you can also spend it to double your training before you roll or double your focus after you roll. Okay, now we have assemble the pool, roll the dice, apply focus. Do I want to use metal before or after I roll? And then you have Soulfire. And Soulfire is basically the group that gets pulled to... When the group is bound together, their souls are kind of commingled. And you can pull on this soul energy to do more than you could normally do. I'm going to just look at this cheat sheet because Soulfire does a lot. You can spend a point of Soulfire to achieve the maximum number of successes on your roll. So every die you have comes up a 6. You could do that beforehand. You can re-roll dice after the fact, as many dice as you want. You can recover all of your metal, or you can cheat death. So now we have 2 meta currencies. When you cast spells, spells are really cool in this game, but you have what's called overcast, where any extra successes above the difficulty of the spell now can be spent to make the spell better. And there's the price of failure. If you fail to cast a spell, you end up, if you fail your test, you have to roll on this price of failure, and you could summon, things go horribly wrong. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this game. Again, in theory, to make one skill test, you are going through multiple steps. Assemble your die pool, roll. Well, assemble your die pool, decide if you want to spend metal or soulfire, roll, apply your focus, decide if you want to spend metal or soulfire, and then we see the results. But here's the thing. It makes for a game that feels super heroic. Because you have a lot of ways to influence a die roll, and those things come back fairly quickly. So you can blow soulfire and metal and know that you're going to get your metal back at the start of the round, and you'll get your soulfire kind of back quicker. No, John, nothing is worse than Genesis, the role-playing game. I'm not a huge fan of that game because there's even more. In that game, the GM is tossing dice into the pool, and then we're seeing, did you succeed with something bad happening? Did you fail with something good happening? Let's narrate the result. This actually feels like a game where I'm playing, a big damn superhero in a world of heavy metal, mischief, and chaos. It is a complex game, and I think that the game would work best with 4 to 6 players. Anything more than that, and I think the rolls would just take too long before your turn came around again. On the GM side, you have a much easier thing to keep track of. You have Doom, and Doom is just a marker that climbs up. It decreases through actions the players take, but you'll have Doom spends on monsters or things where people will say, hey, if the Doom is this value or higher, here's what happens. It's a lot easier on the GM side. Doom also increases so Soulfire is that communal resource. You have to ask the group if you can use Soulfire. If they say no and you still choose to use Soulfire, the Doom goes up. It's the price of drawing on this communal resource without your Soulbound's group's consent and to use this finite resource. So there's a lot going on. But I think mechanically it works well because you have a lot of ways to succeed when you want to and to put it all on the line if you need to for the mission, which is part of being a superhero, which in this game you are really playing very super heroic characters. It's different than the Warhammer Fantasy mechanics of fate, fortune, resilience, and resolve. Like there's 4 meta currencies in Warhammer Fantasy, and they are so fickle and they are so rarely recovered that feels like desperation when you use them. Like, I have to do this or I'm going to die, so I'm going to spend one of these resources. These, not so much. If it goes up too much, you get a cease and desist. Awesome. So, that's the mechanics for Soulbound. And character creation is pretty simple. You pick a species and you pick an archetype from that species. Spend a couple of XP points to buy, adjust skills or talents. And most of the archetypes have if you just want to pick the archetype and get ready to play, you're good to go. And if you know anything about Age of Sigmar, they got a ton of stuff here for you. Cities of Sigmar, Stormcast Eternals, Fireslayer Dwarves, Overlords of Keldon, I think, is the other dwarves, the steampunk dwarves. You can play as Dark Elves, you can play as High Elves, you can play as Idoneth Deepkin, the Deep Sea Cthulian Elves. You can play as the tree people. In the expansion books, you can play as goblins, orcs, uruks, multiple different types of undead. You can play as ogres and trolls. You can play as lizard men and the Seraphon. So if you like Warhammer Age of Sigmar, everything you want is here. But let's talk about this. The Age of Sigmar starter box. Now I have multiple starter boxes from Cubicle 7, and all I can say is each one is even better than the last. So the first thing that they do that I love is they use every inch of the box. The GM gets a map of the Great Parch on the inside of the back cover of the box, and you get a GM screen on the inside cover of the top of the box, so that when you're playing, you have everything you need right in front of you. It comes with several cheat sheets. The combat reference sheet is amazing. The rules reference sheet, just to hand out or to have handy. And the spell reference sheet for your spellcasters. There's also a map of the Great Parch and Brightspear the city to give to your players. It comes with 2 books. There's no rule book, which is really interesting in their core starter sets. What they have is they've got their adventure. So this is the adventure of Faltering Light. It's set in the city of Brightspear, and it teaches you how to run the game and how to play the game as you play through the adventure. So the adventure starts off in the restored city, and you are told to call to make a test from your players, and it explains, hey, what's making a test? When you get to the part where there's combat, it walks you through, here's how combat works. And then you get, obviously, like I said before, the Brightspear City Guide that also has a ton of adventures. Each adventure at the back of the book gives you a monster and then a one-sheet adventure. So that if you play through Faltering Light and you don't have anywhere else to go, you don't have any other books handy, you still have a ton of great adventure hooks. And then it comes with 4 pre-generated characters. And I pulled these up because you really can't see them well on the screen. But these adventures, the character sheets are trifold. And they tell you not to open these, just to read the outside. So each outside has the character's name, the quote, who they are, what they like, and why you should play them. And they end up sitting up in front of the player so that you have this gorgeous piece of art focused out to everyone else at the table. And the reason they don't want you looking in here is because, see if I can pull this down. A page. Too far. Let's go back to our first guy. There we go. On the right-hand side, you get your character sheet explanation. Here's what everything is on this sheet and what you can do with it. On the left side of the character sheet, under your character details, you have goals, connections, and secrets. And essentially, you circle one of these. You circle a goal. It gives you 3 goals. If you achieve this goal, you get an XP, and everyone in the party gets another point of Soulfire. Your connection is are you connected to one of the other players. And then you have secrets. The secrets are why you don't look on the inside until after you pick the character. So you start with, let's see who we've got in here. The 4 characters we have are an Excelsior War Priest, a Stormcast Eternal Night Quester, a Skyrigger, which is one of these steampunk dwarves. You can see that this background has my green screen filter on it because it's showing the smoke. Let me see if I can do this. Turn that off. There we go. That's better. A Tidecaster from the Ideneth Deepkin. and a Kurnoth Hunter of the Sylvanth, I believe is how it's pronounced. Again, not in front of me. I don't. Sylvaneth. So those are the character sheets. And again, cardstock, a little bit heavier than normal. Everything in here you get for $30. And man, for 30 bucks, this is a great deal. It also comes with tokens for Soulfire and Metal and 8d6. So for that, for 30 bucks, you have an adventure, a starting adventure and rule set for a group of 5 players. It's beautiful. The art is gorgeous. The packaging, as Rook was talking about, is amazing. And, you know, don't listen to John Doom. You can open them up, but I wouldn't take the character sheets apart because, you know, local news headline, gamers arrested on accounts of multiple counts of opening trifolds. Makes me feel like that should be something from a... I enjoy reading the funny news stories from one certain part of the country that I enjoy. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So that's Soulbound. That's our look at the Soulbound starter set. The rules, again, it is a fiddly rule system, but at the table, it feels very heroic. And I think once the group got used to it, you would be moving much quicker through, is this a test that I want to spend Soulfire on, Metal on? Is this a time where I want to use my focus? Again, focus doesn't really go very high, so it's only allowing you to make slight adjustments to the die. And once as the GM you understand how to read the difficulty for a test, it becomes pretty second nature. Again, I like the 2 components. It makes me think of the old World of Darkness system, but a little bit more streamlined. So that's it. You'll find the link to the starter set, both PDF and physical copy, on the show notes on this if you're watching it on YouTube down below. And we did a poll, and so we're going to be doing a deep dive into Warhammer 40K's Cubicle 7 again, Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory rule set. We're probably going to do a really long look at the game, the setting, the rules, and what books are out, interspersed with the Maw of Oblivion and Lost Colony reviews and unboxings that I plan on doing as soon as those come in. So to everyone, thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for supporting the show, and we'll be back on Thursday with our first look at Wrath and Glory. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I'm JM, and this has been Behind the Screen. Have a good one.